Alright, hey YouTube, this is a follow-up on the Trance 27.5 demo. And this is, I really like this bike. This was my first experience on a 27.5. And this is the Trance 2, 2015. And there's a lot of things I like about this bike. Obviously, the longer suspension is great. You know, it's 140 millimeters of travel. Fox shocks, which are I really like quite a bit. You can see this fork is pretty substantial. You know, this is a through axle here, and you know, really keeps everything nice and tight. You know, we've got adjustments down here and stuff. The brakes are really good on this bike. They are Shimano derailleur. And they work quite well. I really had a lot of fun on this bike. I hadn't been riding in about 5 months when I got on this bike, so maybe it's not a fair comparison against the Anthem, but I really enjoyed it. The 27.5 wheel and the tire, I really like it. It's more nimble than the 29er. And you know, it's a great compromise between the 26 and 29. The 29 definitely seems to still mute the trail noise a bit more. But this bike is more for the people that like to get up in the air and have some fun and just kind of whip their bikes around, whereas the 29er is more like a conquer everything, stability based bike. It's pretty decent in corners, but not quite as whippable as this, if that's a thing. So, but some cool things I want to talk about this bike. This bike does have a 2x10 drivetrain, so you just have 2 chain rings up front instead of 3. Wasn't so bad because it is a 27.5. On a 29er, I might be a little out of gears, but on this bike, it wasn't so bad. It's got the SLX cranks. And here's the other cool part, chain guide. You know, you get a bike like this, you tend to get it up in the air a little bit more, and this kind of keeps the chain from falling off. It's got 2 little guides in there. I'm not sure if you can quite see that, but it's got 2 rollers, and it does provide a little resistance on the crank set, so efficiency drops a little bit, but you get the added benefit of not losing a chain. And what I've seen is the longer travel you go, the tendency to drop a chain is a little bit higher. Also, they've got this chain guard here that makes it to where, you know, the chain doesn't slap up against there, which is nice. You know, I did a thing on lizard skins. I think it's great to keep your chain stays here nice and you know, solid. You don't want them all nicked up and stuff. But here's the other really cool thing about this bike, which kind of took me by surprise. It has this switch on here, and it keeps this chain really taut. I mean, really taut. So what does that mean? Well, it means when you're going down the trails and you're going over something that would typically give you a lot of chatter from the chain, this bike is very quiet. And I think it's because of this. There's not a whole lot of chain noise from going you know, down these little challenging sections. So really impressed by that. It was just such a quiet ride. The bike is very light, very nimble and fast. I didn't have any problems. You know, I didn't feel like I can get on a 26er and feel the difference. I can feel I feel uncomfortable on a 26er. That's just me. I'm not saying they're bad. It's a bad wheel size. I'm not. What I am saying is I really like the 27.5 a lot better than a 26. As far as, you know, am I, you know, all about 27.5 now versus a 29? I think a 29 has its place. I think it's a really good, you know, it's a good for people who need stability, good for beginners. It's good for people that want to have a lot more confidence in their bikes. You know, I like the, you know, I've ridden the Trance 29er. I like it too. So, but here's another thing that really surprised me on this bike. There's no dropout here. This is a through axle. When I first read about these, that was one of the complaints I saw, was that it had regular dropouts instead of a through axle. Through axle just goes all the way through instead of, you know, a dropout to where it's just like this. This is fully enclosed and the axle goes through. I liked it. You know, this bike was real solid. It was one of those bikes, and this is what you strive for. It's one of those bikes where you just didn't think about the bike a whole lot. You just did your riding. And that's substantial for me. I really like that. The brakes were perfect. Everything was great. You know, as far as like the seat, you know, seats, I'm not super excited about it. I've had other seats that I like a lot better. But you have the option of running a dropper post with these. A lot of people ride dropper posts. I don't particularly ride them. I just don't use them. I like it set where it's set, and I just, you know, deal with the seat where it is. You know, I've never had a problem with the seat getting in the way, and I ride it pretty high, as you can see. I ride it properly adjusted, as though it's a, you know, this is an all mountain bike, but I still have it set up as a cross country bike, and I have it set up for maximum pedal efficiency. So, but the other thing I wanted to talk about is I did a video on a shorter stem and wider bars, and Giant listened to me only and did this, right? No, I'm not that influential, but this is a shorter stem and wider bars, and it was perfect. I really liked the way it was set up. I don't feel the need to get something different. Worked out great. I loved it. So, you know, that's my initial impressions of this bike. I'm stoked with it. I think it's a great bike. You know, it was where I demoed it at is Auburn Bike in California, and what's cool about them is I think at the time it was a $60 demo fee, and then you know, if you were to end up buying the bike, they apply that fee to the sales price. So that's kind of a cool deal, but they let you go out and actually ride these things, and that's great. And if you go to like an actual demo of Giant or whatever brand, you give them your license, and you know, whatever you need to do it. It's typically free to go out and ride these on a trail. So, but this was a fun bike. This was a really good bike. It's got all the components I like. It's got Shimano drivetrain, Shimano brakes, and Fox suspension. Am I saying that Fox is way better than any other brand? No, it's just something I'm really comfortable with and something I really like. I'm not opposed to that. What I'm opposed to is, you know, the more economical type forks and shocks. You know, other brands have higher end, lower end. Typically, Fox just kind of starts out higher, so they tend to be a little bit more expensive. But that's the other really good thing about this bike. The price point on it is fantastic. $2,500, I think, is the retail on it. Sometimes you can get them cheaper than that, but for the bike you get with the Maestro suspension and all that stuff, fantastic. Now, I'm going to do something I don't usually do and say I don't really like something that Giant made. They make a stance, and with the stance, it is not a Maestro suspension. It is just a basic, basic 4-bar single pivot. And the benefits of a single pivot over a double pivot, I just don't see them. I really like the dual pivot setup. It really makes a huge difference in the way it pedals and the way it rides and handles. It's still set up to counter brake jack, so if you're not really concerned about efficiency, it's fine. The stance is real good for just kind of getting into the field, I guess. But if it were me, I would take a Trance over a stance any day, just because of the rear suspension. I've talked about that before, how important rear suspension is and how great Giant is because they have the Maestro suspension. And then what do? They go and make a bike on me that doesn't have the dang Maestro rear suspension. So you know, that just makes my point even more, that you really want to look at the rear suspension and make sure it's exactly what you're looking for, because that's the part you can't change. Okay, when I say you can't change that, I mean you cannot change this part here. this is an integral to the bike itself. You know, if you're a welder, yeah, you can change that. But the actual suspension, this part here, this in here, all these parts, you know, this is a rigid triangle back here. That's something else I look for, is the triangle's rigid. The solid piece comes down here, so it moves correctly, in my opinion. And there are other technologies out there like that, but the Stance does not have this. It is just a single pivot. This is just one linkage, and it's toward the back of the bike. So, you know, you can change this out. You know, I've had that argument. Oh, you can't change out the suspension. No, you can change out the shock. You can't change out the base of the suspension. You cannot change out the geometry and the way it's constructed without radically modifying the bike, or just selling the bike and go getting a new one. So that's why I say it's really important to look at the suspension and get the suspension that works right. But anyway, kind of got off on a tangent there. But as far as my demo ride on this bike, I took it up to Pioneer in California, and really liked it. It's performed very well. I really don't have much bad to say about it. I mean, yeah, I'd like a more comfortable seat, but that's just me getting kind of nitpicky at this point. And what I've seen too, I kind of, you know, with this bike, it came with Ardent tires. I don't know if they put that on there just because of the location, or if it was the store that wanted it spec'd out that way. Maybe they changed out the tires, but on the website it shows a different brand. But these Ardents are pretty good. Yeah, I dig it, man. This was a fun bike. It's worth checking out if you're looking at an all mountain bike. This is a good one, and it rides the flats pretty well too. And it's I don't know. I'm pretty stoked with it. So it's worth checking out. You know, there are other bikes to look at, of course, but for the money, my God, this is a good deal. I mean, you know, the Fox suspension, the real good rear suspension, and the Shimano parts. I love it. This is the way I would spec out a bike if I was building one. Maybe I'd put on, you know, 160 millimeter fork, you know, and go 34 millimeter stanchion, which is the thickness here. Maybe I would have gone with a little thicker one. Basically like the Trance SX. The Trance SX is also something that's built out extremely well. It's more expensive, but it's built out really nicely. It does have a 1x10 instead of a 2x10, and it's got some other things. I think it comes with a dropper seat post and all that. But as far as getting a lot of bang for the buck, this is a pretty good one. I think if you went with some other brands and got the same features, like you know, a Maestro type suspension to where it's got the dual pivot, or like a, you know, Yeti switch or something like that, it'd be real good too. The problem is they get a lot more expensive, and where this bike shines is the economics of it. So anyway, I'm rambling, but yeah, I really enjoyed my ride on this thing. It was a really quiet ride. The bike was really light under me. It moved quickly. I was able to change direction quite a bit quicker than my Anthem 29er. Do I feel I need to replace the Anthem with this? I don't know. If I was going to buy a brand new bike today and was going to deal without something, it would be a toss-up between the Anthem and the Trance. But it would probably be a Trance. Now, whether it be a Trance 29 or Trance 27.5, I'd still be kind of on the fence. But I think I like this 27.5 quite a bit. I like the extra travel the suspension gives me and stuff like that. So pretty cool. I dig it. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So anyway, I appreciate you guys watching, and please subscribe.